Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Todd Blankmeerson, drummer, and today we are pretty much talking about my drum teacher, former drum teacher, Butch Miles. That's right, the one miles away. That's right. So it's kind of funny and all that. My drum teacher's last name is kind of like Miles, like Miles Davis and all that, but it's kind of weird and funny too. But this is pretty much like an update video because I made a video like this like several years ago. Which I pretty much was kind of like titled, What's It Like Having a Drum Legend as Your Teacher? And so that was just kind of like within that semester, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to make a video about this. And now I studied with him for 2.5 years. I actually graduated from Texas State University. And now I'm going to give like the whole scoop because I pretty much did my time with him. And I definitely would love to study with him more, too, because he's such a very knowledgeable guy. He has like a living piece of history, too. So, first of all, I want to mention that I kind of did make a podcast episode, a little bit of this, but I think in this one I'm going to mention a little bit more about what's going on, what happened during my lessons and all that type of stuff. So, I think I mentioned that the first time I first met Butch Miles was during my audition. And so my audition, I got to meet him. He was a pretty cool guy. And now, after that, I was getting ready for my first lesson with him. And so my first lesson, I was very, very nervous. It was like my first time at a university. And I was thinking that, it's going to be so different than community college. And it kind of was, but also kind of felt the same, except it was just a bigger space and I was just living by myself. And so it was very interesting times for me because it was my first time transferring to a place that was kind of like 3 hours away from where I lived, my former hometown and my current living environment. And so I was in San Marcos for a period of time. And my first lesson with him, I was very nervous. And so when I first saw him come, because I was very nervous, he was a drum legend and very well known for playing for Count Basie, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, and all these other guys. And he played with Willie Nelson for a little bit too. But he was like one of these great guys. And so during my first time seeing him, he was like, Todd? I was like, yeah. And it was like, go on down in the room. Let's talk a little bit. And so we pretty much did. I was still nervous, and I was thinking, oh no, he's going to make me play and all that. Oh no, I'm not great as he is and all that type of stuff. And we pretty much, for my first lesson, we pretty much just talked about the syllabus. I was like, whew, okay, we just talked about the syllabus for this week and all that. So basically, every time he has a different thing with his students. Like if he has something with the audio engineers, which we call the SRT majors, sound recording technology, he pretty much just gave them the elemental stuff, like maybe just play a rock beat or play some basic stuff. And for the jazz majors, he's pretty hard on the jazz majors, where he has us write a paper about a jazz person, like maybe Max Roach. And so we wrote a paper about him, about that person. What are some characteristics that you noticed? What are some recordings that you listen to? That type of stuff. And so I did that. I did it sometimes I did one transcription, but it depends on what year you are. If you're if you're classified as a junior or a senior, then you do 2 different transcriptions. And so sometimes I did one, and still I got an A for that class for some reason. I'm like, okay. And because I kind of forgot, I was like, was I supposed to do 1 or 2? And sometimes I did ask as well. So that was pretty much the syllabus. And he had an interesting way about books. He taught out of books. And so what we pretty much did was we didn't use syncopation, which was very Ted Reed's syncopation. I was very surprised that he used to do that, but he got rid of that book for some reason. I don't know. But he actually used this book from Joe Casati's, and all it is was just moving around the kit. And that was super important. So he actually demonstrated why that was important. And just him playing was really profound as a student, just to see him play. And also trading fours with him was pretty awesome, because when you trade fours, and this is kind of like a drum jam in my opinion, where you're playing with your drum teacher. You're doing your own stuff, and you're listening to your drum teacher play some interesting licks and you try to copy what he did. And so that's pretty much what I think that was the biggest point in when I was studying under him, was just having him as my drum teacher and him playing, and he was just giving me some of his vocabulary that he has accumulated throughout the years. And so that, in my opinion, is the biggest thing from my drum teacher, is just not just the books, but just training force with him was pretty profound in my opinion. So that was another thing that I liked with my drum lesson. So we went over books, and this is something that I think that he did exclusively with me, was we actually did the hi-hat integration book, because I was like, you know what? Those UNT guys, they're doing like this book right here, and it's a grad level book. And I asked my teacher, hey, if I got you a copy of this book, would you help me work out this book for maybe a semester? And he said, oh, he looked over it. I gave him like just like a little bit of my copy to look at, and he looked at it, was like, yeah, we can use these as like part of your like funk type of stuff, like getting your funk more funky. And so, and he was like, Todd, this is such a hard book, like I'm glad you're learning this stuff, like whew. And if you know my videos on my if you know my Instagram and just like my normal YouTube videos talking about like hi-hat integration, exactly, those were some very hard grooves. And sometimes some of my fans on Instagram, they try to play it, and they do a pretty good job. And they do admit that that is a really hard book. So I pretty much worked with that book. I was only able to do the first page. Like I wasn't even able to do the first page, like the complete first page. That's how hard the book was. And when Butch helped me out, we had like a little plan. And so he pretty much told me, okay, work on this whole page for the week and come back and see what we got. And so we did that, and we were able to get to like 8 pages. And so I was with him. There were times like he told me like, oh, he played for like a Buddy Rich ceremony, or he played at jazz like jazz parties. So it's like, oh wow. And so it kind of shows me a little bit of that, and like there's a lot of great stuff that we did with him. So with the hi-hat integration thing, we went like all the way to page 8. And so without him, like I would probably be at page 3, to be honest. But right now I'm like at page 8. I'm trying to get to 9. But the beats, it's really helping out with your process rate, in my opinion. And so that's one thing that we really worked on. But we pretty much worked on that. We worked on the Joe Casade's book. We worked on the John Pickering book, the Jazz Drumming Cookbook. We worked on, there was so many other books that we also worked on. And I made a video about that too, and that video is pretty up to date. So check that video out. I might put a link in the description showing you that video. And that's pretty much up to date, except for the fact of hi-hat integration book. We pretty much, that was a book we added on later. So we pretty much did those types of things book-wise. So we did books. I actually wrote papers for him, just like as any other teacher. Wrote like papers about drum legends, and I traded fours with him. And this is the biggest thing, in my opinion. Not only is he a teacher, but you also have the opportunity to see him perform. And I think that is one great reason to have a teacher, is that you're studying with this person. You're studying, but you want to see what he's got and all that. So this is the thing about teachers. Like if I'm playing or performing and I'm your teacher or your musical mentor, you will probably want to see me perform, and you want to see me apply some of these concepts in a musical way. And so that's the biggest thing. That's the thing I think that you should have as a teacher, is that say you're going to college and your teacher, you have the opportunity to see your teacher perform, whether it's in school or out of school. You get to see your drum teacher actually interact with the musicians. You get to see all these other things that are going on. And so it's such a privilege to do that. So there's a lot of times I got to see my drum teacher perform. Whether if it's like just like my older teachers and all that, I got to see them perform sometimes. Like I got to see my first drum teacher, Mike Misma, well, professional drum teacher, Mike Misma. I got to see my drum teacher, Joel Foljam, James Metcalf, and Butch Miles. I got to see him play with the faculty and the Count Basie Orchestra. Well, almost the original members of the Count Basie Orchestra, because they had some members that are official, some members that kind of died off, and then they just had someone replace them. And Butch Miles was one of the official members while Count Basie was alive. And he got to perform live over at Texas State. I'm pretty sure, like, students, we got in for free. And if it was something for me not to miss, because I was like, you know what, it's the Count Basie Big Band. I know my drum teacher is going to play, even though it doesn't say that special guest Butch Miles is going to perform. I just assumed that my drum teacher was going to play that night, and I was right. And I got to witness what jazz was like back in the day. And to me, you can't teach that. You have to be there. And there's so much we could do to teach feel. There's so much we could do to teach examples. And so pretty much the Count Basie Big Band with my drum teacher playing was a great or colossal example of feel, dynamic contrast, and interacting with the musicians when it's a solo. And I got to experience that, and that's just like a once in a lifetime thing. So now, in the past, I actually wanted to go to a different university and all that. This was before I actually wanted to go to Texas State. And Texas State wasn't my first choice, and I'm very grateful that I actually decided to go to Texas State. And I'm very fortunate that all these things that happened, like me not getting into UNT, me not getting into UT Austin, which I really didn't want to because of some other things. And I was very fortunate to be part of Texas State as a Bobcat and as a jazz major and a former student of Butch Miles, one of his many students. And so there's some things that I took away from him, and also some things he actually let me have. I actually borrowed stuff from him, and I was telling him, hey man, here's your stuff, thank you for letting me borrow it, and all that type of stuff. And he was like, no, keep it. I was like, really? Okay. Are you sure? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so he actually let me have his own brushes. Yes, I actually have my former drum teacher's brushes. And he let me have them. He actually let me have his brushes and CD. He actually let me a copy of Sammy Nisico with, who was it that played drums on that one? Vinnie Colaiuta. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but Vinnie, he was a really great drummer. And I got to hear him play that CD, how to interact with like just musicians, because I was trying to get some vocabulary for big band, because I was like, I know how to read the chart, but I want to know more of how to do more creativity while reading the chart. And so Butch gave me that CD and he let me borrow it, and then that was during the break. And so when I came back, I was like, oh, thank you for letting me borrow that CD. And it was like, no, keep it. And all that. I was like, really? Okay. Are you sure? It was like, yeah, keep it. I was like, oh, wow. And so I have two personal things from my actually free and all that. I actually have Butch Miles' autograph from like a couple of them from when I was actually doing my senior recital. And so it's pretty awesome that, in junior recital too. So I actually do have his autograph and all. So that is really cool thing to have, is some of these things from him personally. His brush, a CD that he had, and some two documents that he autographed on to confirm that, yes, I'm good for this date for Todd to have his recital. And so these were really great times that I had. And I got to see him perform. He was my drum teacher, Trey Force. And so there was a lot of great stuff that I have done with my drum teacher. And we talked musical stuff. when it came to master classes, I was so fortunate that he actually, him and some other percussion faculty, he was the only drum set guy in the jazz field. And so he had some classical people come and as students. So he actually had these master classes. He invited like 2D Heath, he invited John Riley, and so I got to interact with these wonderful musicians and some other musicians I can't think of right now that are really, really great. And so, and I have pictures with me with some of these really great legends. One picture I didn't get with was, who was his name? I think it was Henry Riley. If not, I'll probably put a text right here. And that was one drummer I didn't get a picture with and all that for various reasons and all that, but I'm not going to say them and all. So, but I had a really great time with all these teachers, and these teachers that were brought by Butch Miles. And so they told me great things, and they said stuff that I need to work on. They also said like, man, your ride pattern is really, really good. And getting to meet some other people too, because I got to participate in these master classes, because I was like, I'm volunteering first no matter what, because I'm like, something's good going to come out of this. And so that's the mindset I had when I was attending these master classes, because when it was a percussion master class or just a master class in general that required like me having an opportunity to play, I raised my hand. And so, and Butch was in the audience, so he got to witness that. And next time when we come in the lesson, he talked about like some good things, some bad things, or not bad things, or just things to improve on. So that's a lot of great stuff that was happening while I was at Texas State. So these are just things coming up with my head, and I think there's going to be a lot more. But I think this is pretty much a good set of information I should give to you, to let you know if you're a Butch Miles fan or just a person that is looking into getting to Texas State, what was my experience as a jazz major in performance, as an undergrad, but also you could do this as a master's too. This is what my experience was like with Butch Miles. It was super awesome. And so I highly recommend going to Texas State if you can, because like, if you can and all that, like no one's going to be here forever and all that. And I was very fortunate to have the time, the opportunity to go over there and be with a jazz legend, and him bringing in some other legends too, like Tootie Heath, Johnny Vidacovich, or I can't remember how to pronounce his name right, and John Riley, and some other really great acts. And so I just encourage you, like, if you get into Texas State University, do it. Like, it's going to be such a wonderful learning experience, wonderful campus, and I love every minute of it. So yeah, that's pretty much what I got for you today. So let me know what you think about this. If you're a former student of Butch Miles, let me know. You know, I would love to network with you, pick your brain a little bit. It was like, what you been doing? What you been doing with Butch Miles and all that? So that's pretty much what I got with you guys. And so I'm Todd Blackman, your student drummer, and I will see you in the next one, guys.